Greetings, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Today, we're going to be discussing the parable that Yashua talked about that said, the last shall be first and the first shall be last. Now, like many Bible scriptures, there are many interpretations of what this parable meant. But the interpretation that I'm going to give you today is going to be different than probably what you've heard before. It's not going to be the Christianized interpretation that most preachers have been given the people. This interpretation is for Israel. It is for the Israelite people, which I believe Yashua had intended it to be for, because that's who he was speaking to when he gave these parables. So this message was for his people. So, starting in Matthew chapter 20, it says, "For the kingdom of heaven is like unto a man that is an householder, which went out early in the morning to hire laborers unto his vineyard. And when he had agreed with the laborers for a penny a day, he sent them into his vineyard. And he went out about the third hour, and saw others standing idle in the marketplace, and said unto them, Go ye also into the vineyard, and whatsoever is right I will give you. And they went their way." Okay, so before moving on to verse 5, let's first examine what it is he is referring to here. Now notice he is talking about the kingdom of heaven. He is not talking about a kingdom on earth or in this world. He is talking about the kingdom of heaven, right? So this is the Most High's kingdom, and he is the householder. He was put in charge by the Most High. So he goes and hires laborers, right? So this is talking about Yashua and his servants, those who push the word of the Most High, those who spread the word, those who are at his service, those who keep his commandments, etc. This is the laborers, and they're all being fairly rewarded equally for the work that they put in. Okay, so moving on to verse 5. And it says, "Again, he went out about the 6th and 9th hour, and did likewise. And about the 11th hour he went out, and found others standing idle, and said unto them, Why stand ye here all day idle? They said unto him, Because no man has hired us. He said unto them, Go ye also into the vineyard, and whatsoever is right, that shall you receive. So when evening was come, the Adonai of the vineyard said unto his steward, Call the laborers, and give them their hire, beginning from the last unto the first. And when they came that were hired about the 11th hour, they received every man a penny. But when the first came, they supposed that they should have received more. And they likewise received every man a penny. And when they had received it, they murmured against the good man of the house." So that right there, let alone, is the difference between the kingdom of heaven and this world. It's the difference between the Most High and man. Because down here on earth, it never goes in that order when you're working at a job, right? It's usually the first and then the last that gets paid for their work. And usually the ones that come first, they are given a raise. They are given paid more than the new hires. So that's how it works down here in this world. But in the kingdom of heaven, it obviously is different. He said the last should get paid first and then the first. Not only that, but the people that worked less time at the vineyard are going to receive the same pay as those who worked longer hours. They're going to get paid the same amount for the less work that they put in. And that's why they went on to complain to the good man of the house, that is Yashua. Now remember, this is a parable that's talking about spirituality. It's talking about the work that we put in for the Most High to advance his kingdom. So continue on in verse 12. It says, "These lads have worked but 1 hour, and thou hast made them equal unto us, which has borne the burden and heat of the day." But he answered one of them and said, "Friend, I do thee no wrong. Did thou not agree with me for a penny? Take that is thine, and go thy way. I will give unto the last, even as unto you. Is it not lawful for me to do what I will with my own? Is thine eye evil because I am good?" Okay, so that last part is kind of the hint of who are the last. Who are these people that just came in to advance the kingdom, and they're going to be rewarded the same as those who came before them? These are the Israelites. This is what he meant by, is it not lawful for me to do what I will with my own? He is talking about his own people, his own kindred, the Israelites. How do I know that? Because it matches up with Scripture. You can interpret Scripture with other Scriptures. So here in Romans 11, it is talking about the same exact thing that Yeshua was talking about in the parable, but it is applying it to the Israelites. It is applying it to the Gentiles. So think of these two people groups as the laborers in the parable. You have Gentiles and then you have the Israelites. Starting at Romans 11, verse 11 through 15. I say then, have they stumbled that they should fall? Yah forbid, but rather through their fall salvation has come to the Gentiles, for to provoke them to jealousy. Now if the fall of them be the riches of the world, and the diminishing of them the riches of the Gentiles, how much more their fullness? For I speak to you Gentiles, inasmuch as I am the apostle of the Gentiles, I magnify mine office, if by any means I may provoke to emulation them which are my flesh, and might save some of them. For if the casting away of them be the reconciling of the world, what should the receiving of them be but life from the dead? So now let's add context to what Paul is saying here in these verses. We know before the Gentiles ever came around to the faith, there was only Israel. The Most High was the God of Israel. Yeshua was the Savior of Israel. He sacrificed himself for his people. But what happened? Most of his people rejected him. They did not view him as their Messiah. They were blind. They were ignorant of the prophecy that foretold of him. So the Most High spread his words to the Gentiles. They were grafted into the faith. So now the faith of the Hebrews was now being represented by the Gentile people. And this was shortly after the crucifixion of the Messiah. When the apostles started to spread the words to the Gentiles, they became the laborers. And as Paul said, this was done to provoke Israel to jealousy. This was done to make them want to return to their God, to their Most High, because the Gentiles had now taken their place. They had taken their role that they were meant to be in. Now, of course, did they represent it right? Obviously not, as you go through the history of what they have done. But nonetheless, they still became first. They are the ones that went around the world evangelizing all the people. They are the ones that went around the world making these heathens abandon their pagan practices, although there's still elements of it here and there. But nonetheless, it was these Gentiles that became the gatekeepers of the Bible for the most part. Of course, you had Ethiopia and Africa who had access to the Bible, but they weren't going around the world colonizing all of these nations and presenting them with the Bible. That was the Gentiles. That was the Europeans that went to the four corners of the earth and presented every nation with the Bible. And that's not to justify everything that they have done. That's just talking about the spreading of the word. They were spreading the word when they came to these nations. They may not have carried out what the word said, but they were still giving these nations the word. Something that Israel was meant to be doing. This was the job of Israel, but they were blinded and lost their way. But that was not the end of Israel. It says here in Matthew 11, chapter 25 through 27, for I would not, brethren, that ye should be ignorant of this mystery, lest you should be wise in your own conceits, that blindness in part is happened to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles come in. And so all Israel shall be saved, as it is written, there should come out of Zion the deliverer, and shall turn away ungodliness from Jacob, for this is my covenant unto them when I shall take away their sins. So do you see how this matches up perfectly with the parable of Yashua in saying the last shall be first and the first shall be last? Paul said that this blindness on Israel is going to last until the fullness of the Gentiles come in. And then shall Israel be saved. So when does this take place? Well, here in Matthew chapter 24, verse 14, it tells us when this is supposed to happen. Matthew 24, verse 14, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. So once the gospel has reached all four corners of this world, that is when the end times will begin. That is when the blindness on part of Israel would start to come off. That is when they will become awakened to their role in the kingdom of the Most High, in the kingdom of heaven. So this is why for the past 2,000 years, the actual people of the book, the Hebrews, they haven't been the representatives of their own faith. It was the Gentiles who had taken over their own faith. Luke chapter 21, verse 24 talks about this. It says, and they shall fall by the edge of the sword and shall be led away captive into all nations, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. This aligns with what we just read in Romans chapter 11. The fullness of the Gentiles is when Israel will be saved. So that is in the end times according to Luke chapter 21. And that is also when most of the world has received or heard about the gospel of Yashua. That then is the moment that Israel will open their eyes. They will become awakened in the last days. So that leads us to the end of the parable where Yashua says in Matthew chapter 20, verse 16, so the last shall be first, and the first last, for many be called, but few chosen. So the last shall be first. Who is he talking about? He is talking about Israel. And the problem is the world has been wrong about who Israel truly is, and that is probably why they haven't been able to get this parable right. These are the top 3 reasons why true Israel has been unacknowledged by the world. 1, the curse of the law. When Israel broke the covenant that they made with the Most High in the wilderness when they came out of Egypt, the curses of the law in Deuteronomy chapter 28 was to come upon them in full. And one of the main ones is that they would no longer be a nation. They will be kicked out of the land and scattered across the world. And the prophets told us how this scattering was going to occur. Joel chapter 3, verse 6 through 7, the children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have you sold unto the Greeks, that you might remove them far from their border. Behold, I will raise them out of the place where you have sold them, and will return your recompense upon your own head. So this is giving you a description of what happened to the Jews. Now, we already know the Israelites previously went into slavery way before the Jews did. So their scattering already occurred before then. But the scattering of the Jews happened after 70 AD. It happened after the Messiah was resurrected. Just as the northern kingdom of Israel went into captivity, so would the Jews. But this time they would be completely removed from their land, and they wouldn't return until the Most High brought them back, as prophecy states. Now, the key to who these people were is that they were sold to the Greeks. Now, this was an Old Testament prophecy. So the Greeks were the ruling power of Europe at that time. So when it says the Jews were sold to the Greeks, it is saying they were sold to Europe. They were sold to the Europeans. Now, there's only one group of people that was being sold to the Europeans and being scattered all across the world, and that is the Negroes. The history of so-called black people matches up perfectly with Bible prophecy as it pertains to the Jews. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 37, and thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword among all nations where YAHUAH shall lead thee. And this is exactly what happened to Negroes. That is the reason why they are called Negroes in the first place, because there is no nation or kingdom that was called the Negro Kingdom. That word is a byword, just as black is or African American is. And notice it says they will be called these things among all the nations where they end up. So wherever the Jews and Israelites were in this world following the departure from the land of Israel, they weren't being called Israelites and Jews anymore by the nations. They were being called bywords. And once again, this matches up perfectly with so-called black people. Now, of course, we could go way deeper into this, but I've already done that through previous videos. So if you're new to the channel, I do suggest you go check those out because the evidence is overwhelming. But moving on, the second main reason why true Israel has been unacknowledged by the world is stolen identity. They have had their identity stolen. And the reason why they have their identity stolen, it ties back into the curses of the law. One of the curses was that they were going to become a byword. So as they became a byword and diminished, the Gentiles decided to take on their identity. And now there's two groups today who has taken on the identity of being Israel. One is obviously the Jewish people, the Ashkenazi Jews of Europe. Those who came from Germany, they identify as Israel today.
The Bible proves that the Jewish people are the most unique people on the face of the earth. They are a chosen people. They are a covenant people. They are a cherished people. They are the apple of God's eye.
Appreciate football, and I love football. It's my favorite sport.
Thank you so much, Speed. You know, we are a channel from Israel where everyone loves you a lot in Israel. And you have something to say to them?
So who?
To Israel.
So we're appreciate all my fans there.
Now, I'm not going to go too deep into that as well because I already made previous videos dealing with these people and how they ended up becoming Jewish and why they're called Israel today. And plus the evilness that they've been committing in this world, most people by now are starting to wake up and realize that they are not the true Israelites of the Bible. And that ties into the second group that has stolen the identity of true Israel, and that is the Christians, the modern day Christians, aka Gentiles.
Israel has no rule over us as Christians. They are killing people worldwide, specifically in Gaza, despite having a ceasefire. And many Christians think that we're supposed to honor that. No, you're above that. You are Israel. Just because they claim to be Israel doesn't make them Israel. Just because they claim to be God's chosen Jewish people doesn't mean they even are that. You are the chosen person. And I don't stand with Israel killing innocent people, innocent children for that matter. You are Israel. You are the chosen person.
And the irony with such statements that these Gentile Christians are making in being Israel is that they are doing exactly what they're accusing the other group of Gentiles of doing. They are stealing the identity of who Israel is.
Who is a Jew?
A true Jew, a true follower of Jesus, is one who indeed has what the Bible calls the circumcision of the heart, whose heart is committed to Christ through faith.
Who are those who are circumcised?
Circumcision in the Old Testament was a physical act that signified the setting apart of the Jewish individual, Jewish males, as part of the covenant, that they were followers of the covenant. Circumcision in the New Testament is the commitment of the heart, the setting aside of the heart to follow Jesus Christ.
Now, I've also made previous videos about this too, about Christians claiming to be Israel. But today it is becoming even more prominent as most of the world is starting to wake up to the fact that those in the land of Israel are not the true people. So now they are going back to the original doctrine that the early Christians had, in that they are the true Israel. So we're going to briefly break that down as to why that is not the case. And we're going to be using scripture to debunk their false claims. For one, the Apostle Paul made it known that there was a clear distinction between Israelites and Gentiles. He did not say that they were one and the same. He did not say that the Gentiles have now replaced Israel and is the new Israel. He never stated those words. Here is what the Apostle Paul said in Romans 11, starting at verse 11. It says, I say then, have they stumbled that they shall fall? YAHUAH forbid, but rather through their fall salvation is come to the Gentiles, for to provoke them to jealousy. Notice it says nothing about the Gentiles taking on a new covenant with the Most High. It says salvation is come to the Gentiles. Nothing about the Gentiles becoming Israel. Nothing about the Gentiles becoming the new chosen people. It says that Israel is going to be provoked to jealousy by them. Romans 11, verse 14, if by any means I may provoke to emulation them which are my flesh, and might save some of them. So clearly, the Apostle Paul is making two distinctions between Gentiles and Israel. And one being that he said, they which are my flesh. He didn't say they which have the same spirit as me. He's not talking about spirituality in this verse. He's talking about they who are related to him, who came from the same forefathers, those who are Israelites by blood. And historically, we have evidence of what those Israelites would have looked like, who are of the same flesh and blood as the Apostle Paul and Yashua the Messiah. 2,000 years ago, here is what the Roman historian Tacitus had to say about the Jews, referring to their race. This can be found in his work, The Histories, which was written in 110 CE. And one of the theories that he documented was that the Jews were a race of Ethiopian origin who fled their homeland out of fear and hatred during the reign of King Caiaphas. So notice he compares them to a race of Ethiopian origin. Who were the Ethiopians? They were black people. They were Africans. So he says the Jews originated from Ethiopian origin, meaning that they are looked also like black people. They were a race of black people. And the Roman Tacitus is not the only one to have said this. Plenty have said this after him. But he was closer to the time around when the Jews were still in the land of Israel. So this holds a lot more weight because he was around to see exactly what they look like. And this is what he compared them to. He compared them to black Ethiopians. And the Bible also references Ethiopians as being black. Jeremiah 13, verse 23, can the Ethiopian change his skin? Ethiopians were known for being dark-skinned. They were known for being black, historically, and even to this day. And just as the Roman Tacitus compared them to Ethiopians, the Most High also compared the children of Israel to Ethiopians in the Old Testament. Amos chapter 9, verse 7. Are you not as children of the Ethiopians unto me, O children of Israel, says YAHUAH. So They obviously must have looked alike if the Most High and even historians had grouped them together. So for these Gentile Christians to come out who are clearly European and Caucasian, for them to come out and say that they are Israel, that is a lie. They cannot be Israel if they don't fit the description of what the original Israelites look like. So they go on to claim that they are spiritual Israel. Well, spiritually, you can be anyone that you want to be. Today, there are men who spiritually think they are women. That doesn't make it true, but you can spiritually believe whatever you want. But in prophecy, the Most High has made it clear that the Israelites today are those who directly descend to those who came out of the land of Egypt in those times. Ezekiel chapter 20, verse 34 through 36, and I will bring you out from the people and will gather you out of the countries where you were scattered with a mighty hand and with a stretched out arm and with fury poured out. And I will bring you into the wilderness of the people, and there I will plead with you face to face, like as I pleaded with your fathers in the wilderness of the land of Egypt. So will I plead with you, says YAHUAH, your Elohim. So this is referring to the end times. This is referring to when he's going to gather Israel out of the nations that they were scattered to. And the Most High is going to save them just like the Apostle Paul said he would in Romans 11. This is the reconciliation of Israel that is yet to come. So when you say you're Israel, you have to be sure that your fathers were the ones that made the covenant with the Most High when he took them into the wilderness out of the land of Egypt. And this isn't to say that there won't be strangers who will sojourn along with the Israelites when the Most High fulfills this prophecy, because indeed there will be, but the bulk of the people, the Israelites, they will be actual blood descendants of those who came out of the land of Egypt. So now that we somewhat clarified that, let's move on to the third and last main reason why true Israel has been unacknowledged by the world. And that is, it's been covered up by the same people who also is claiming to be Israel. Psalm 83, verse 1 through 4. Keep not thy silence, O YAHUAH, hold not thy peace, and be not still, O YAHUAH. For lo, thy enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, Come, let us cut off them from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. So this is talking about the cover-up. This is the reason why Israel wasn't going to be made known until the end of the age, until the fullness of the Gentiles came to its conclusion, because it was the Gentiles who have been covering it up. And the Muslim Arabs is also a part of this conspiracy. In the following verses 5 through 8, it says, For they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee, the tabernacles of Edom and the Ishmaelites, of Moab and the Hagarenes, Jebel, Ammon, Amalek, the Philistines with the inhabitants of Tyre. Ashur it also is joined with them. They have hope in the children of Lot, Selah. So even the Arab people are in on this conspiracy to hide who the true children of Israel is. And that's also the reason why Islam made its way so far deep into Africa to forcibly convert Negroes into being Muslims. They wanted to hide the identity of who they were. Yes, there were Jews in West Africa, but they were forced to convert to Islam, and over time they lost their identity. They became Muslims. They forsaken the covenant that they had with the Most High, being his chosen people. And European Christians did the same exact thing. Remember, it's a confederate. So when the European Christians came, they also made black people, Negroes, convert to their religion and forced them to assimilate into Western European culture. And in doing so, the Jews that were all throughout Africa ended up losing their identity as the chosen people. And likewise, even their descendants would lose their identity as the chosen people because they were enslaved and kidnapped and brought to the New World, where they were deliberately stripped of their former heritage by Europeans. Europeans did not want Negro slaves to know anything about their past history. They even took it as far as removing books from the Bible and edifying it into a slave Bible so that Negroes wouldn't read it and stumble across some of their own history that relates to their ancestors. They didn't want Negro slaves knowing about the Exodus. They didn't want Negro slaves knowing about the prophecies and the parables that I mentioned in this video. They wanted them to remain unaware of who they were as a people. Because once again, the awakening of Israel brings about the end of the Gentiles' reign on earth. It brings about the return of Yashua the Messiah, who will usher in the kingdom of heaven. An Israelite king is going to reign here on earth. This is something that they do not want to see happen because that's the end of their reign. They don't want to see the fullness of the Gentiles come to an end, because then they also are going to have to be judged for all the things that they have done, especially against Israel. Revelation chapter 13, verse 10, he that leads into captivity shall go into captivity. He that kills with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. Who were the saints? The saints were Israelites. And that's what they had to go through for the past 400 years. Even farther back, for the past 2,000 years, you can even say. They were subjected to captivity and being killed by the sword. Who were they subjected to this by? By the Gentiles. Remember, they were sold unto the Grecians. They were sold to Europeans. In the end times, the same thing that they did to Israelites is going to come back upon them. This is what they fear. And that's why it says in Matthew chapter 20, verse 16, the last shall be first and the first last. This is going to be their punishment for doing what they did to Israel. And ironically, it was a Negro slave that used this same exact parable against them, in return bringing about the end of slavery here in America. And that was Nat Turner. Nat Turner was aware that he was an Israelite. He read the Bible. He interpreted prophecy just like we're doing here in this video. And he knew it was about his people. So when he did what he did, he used the same parable that I'm using in this video. Matthew chapter 20, verse 16, the last shall be first. Nat Turner interpreted this biblical passage as a revolutionary call to upend the brutal hierarchy of slavery. He believed that the Most High had chosen him to overthrow his oppressors, casting the enslaved as the spiritually first in a coming apocalyptic kingdom. This liberation theology gave Turner the foundation to justify his deadly 1831 uprising in Southampton County, Virginia, an event that would shock the nation and profoundly change the trajectory of American history. Why was this so shocking to the white establishment at that time? It wasn't because it was just a rebellion. It was because he knew he was an Israelite and he was awakening other black people into knowing that they also were Israelites. What spooked them the most was the prophecy. They knew that them awakening also meant that, once again, the fullness of the Gentiles was coming to its conclusion. You see, the start of the colonial era, which you can trace back to 1492, that officially marked a changing of the guard in the world, where the first, biblically speaking, were the Jews. They will become last, and the last, which are the Gentiles, they would become first. The colonial era was all about white superiority. It was all about uplifting European Gentiles. That is why the paintings of the Most High and anything related to the Bible, they were all paintings of white European people. The movies, the TV shows, everything up until today, it is all geared towards white supremacy. Even the riches that they attain and the luxury lifestyles that they have in these nations, they get it from Africa. They get it from these people being put last. And them being aware of this also explains the strange obsession in Europe's customs and traditions of depicting Negroes, aka Jews, being servants in celebratory fashion. It was tradition for elites of the European nations to have blackamoor statues placed inside their homes. It was tradition, and still is tradition, for Europeans to dress up in blackface and wear woolly afro hair to mock black people. Why are they doing this? Why is it a celebration of mocking black people? It's because they know who they are and they have benefited from these Negroes being put last. They have benefited from the Jews being diminished and being blinded. And they know once they awaken, once the Jews awaken, all of this changes. If you search up why did European elites wear blackamoor brooches, here is the results. It say European elites wore blackamoor brooches and other decorative arts of Negroes as ultimate symbols of wealth, status, and imperial power. Originating in the 16th and 17th century Venice, the style romanticized the exotic. While considered highly offensive and racist today, historically, they represented European encounters with Moors and sub-Saharan Africans, depicting them in decorative, subservient, or highly embellished exotic roles. So they knew exactly who we were all along. It says they depicted Negroes as subservient. So if you search up what that means, it is an adjective that describes someone who is excessively compliant, obedient, or submissive, often acting like a servant to someone in a higher position. So basically, a servant or a slave. In the Bible, the Jews, Israelites, experienced several periods of subservience, exile, and subjugation. These are frequently described as consequences of failing to keep the covenant with the Most High. However, their status continually shifted between being an independent nation, an oppressed minority, and a sovereign people. But eventually, that status remained the same following 135 AD when they were kicked out of the land. They were no longer returned back to the land like they were in past times. Remember when they went into slavery in Babylon and Persia, the Most High returned them back to Jerusalem. He returned them back to Judea. But 135, when the Romans kicked them out, that was the last time that they were in the land. The kingdom of Israel and Judah and its inhabitants has not been brought back to the land and restored as a nation again. When they fell, that was the end of it. Right now, they are scattered across the world just as Bible prophecy states. But the time is fast approaching where they, once again, will become first. In the end times, we're going to be seeing a changing of the guard again, one that we witnessed take place 2,000 years ago, which would come into its fullness with the colonial era. Well, that era is coming to an end. These former colonial powers are in full panic mode right now. They know that their time is coming to an end. They know that these are the last days, and they are trying to do everything they can to hang on to power. So the parable of the last being first and the first being last is not going to sit well with those who have benefited from being placed in that position. It's not going to sit well with them seeing Israel come into the rightful position that they were always meant to be in. And that is as the servants of the Most High, their God, their Elohim. So as you see Israel being restored in these last days, just be aware that you will see Gentiles murmuring and complaining about them taking their rightful role in the kingdom of heaven. And no, this is not about race. This is not about IQ. This is not about status as a people. This is not about superior genes. This is not about any of that. This is about being a chosen people that was selected by the Most High to be his representatives here on earth. And that people was Israel. Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 6 through 8. For thou art an holy people unto YAHUAH thy Elohim. And YAHUAH has chosen thee to be a special people unto himself above all people that are upon the face of the earth. YAHUAH did not set his love upon you, nor choose you, because you were more in number than any people, for you were fewest than all people, but because YAHUAH loved you, and because he would keep the oath which he has sworn unto your fathers, has YAHUAH brought you out with a mighty hand and redeemed you out of the house of the bondmen, from the hand of Pharaoh king of Egypt. So it's not any particular reason why Israel is special other than the Most High has chose them, other than the Most High has sworn an oath with their forefathers that he will be their Elohim. As that verse stated, it's not because they were superior to other nations or more powerful or stronger than the other nations. Obviously, that was not the case if you know their history and how they were subjugated over time by many nations. In fact, they never would have become a nation without the backing of the Most High. He chose them because they were an holy people. He chose them because of the faith that their forefathers had in the Most High. And while the Most High can be a God to all people in this world, there's still a distinction between Israel being the chosen people and the Gentiles, whose salvation has come in part due to Israel's rebellion against the Most High and keeping his covenant and rejecting their Messiah. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe. And until the next video, YAHUAH.